Trendsresearch.com is the excellent website. I suggest you subscribe. It is invaluable information. Trendsresearch.com. Gerald Celente is our guest all the way to the end of the next hour. We'll have open phones next hour after we have some more time to talk with Gerald. We're having a few breakups via our video connection, but we're very honored to have him. Here's some really bad news. Rand Paul is seen as the leader of the true Tea Party movement right now. They've pulled out the stops. They had a video feed where he couldn't hear them with a 2-second delay. And they said, do you support repealing the Civil Rights Act? And he said, yes, yes, I can't hear you. Yes, I can hear you now. And then he said, no, I don't agree with getting rid of it. Now, that's a quote. Then they took his yes, yes, now I can hear you. He was having problems just like Gerald is with a connection. And they ran with the headline, he wants to get rid of the Civil Rights Act, and that was a national hoax. Now, I don't mean to divert. I want to get into the other ways he's saying we can protect ourselves and more of his trends forecast. It's been so devastatingly accurate. Here's the horrible news, though. Washington Post, GQ magazine, woman says Rand Paul kidnapped her in college, tried to force her to take bong hits. And, folks, I'll bet you my bottom dollar, you know, we've got Al Gore with the semen-stained clothing with this other woman, and that's being covered up. But with Rand Paul, this is Gerald, we're going to see more and more desperate stuff like this, aren't we?
Yeah, that sounds like a story they could have ran about me, and it might have been true.
But going back to Gerald, you got cut off. You were getting into some of the solutions, some of the ideas, as we go into this greatest depression. And then you were also commenting on this new fraternity stunt thing that they're trying to claim was Rand Paul kidnapping people, but they're not even giving the woman's name. Sounds very, very suspicious.
Well, it's really pretty stupid, too. I mean, come on, you know, a guy wanting a girl to take some hits of a bong when he's in college. You know, who does? I mean, really? I mean, what is this, Ozzy and Harry, to Leave It to Beaver Week? And let's get real over here. And here they're making a big deal out of this one. Hey, how about those people in those white shirts and ties and those very expensive jackets that are giving the orders to bomb innocent people in foreign countries? You think you could get upset about that a little bit? Hey, how about a Predator drone in a Pakistani's backyard who had nothing to do with you and wiping out the family? And they're talking about a couple of bong hits? How about all these psychotic drugs that these psychopaths are on that they're selling through Pfizer and all the rest of them? And they're talking about a couple of bong hits? These guys are a disgrace. They call themselves the media. How about calling yourself a little puppet?
Continue.
Well, what we're saying here, Alex, is that when the elections come up in November, there's not going to be any change yet, because going to the Republicans from the Democrats it's a two-headed one-party system. You know, people ask me, who would I vote for? And I say, on the social issues in terms of the environment, clean food, and those kind of things, I would vote for Ralph Nader. On terms of the economy, not becoming involved in foreign entanglements, a Ron Paul. And that's what this country is looking for. Not they talk about centrist parties. We don't have centrist parties. We have radical fascist parties. Here's an example. You know that wonderful little story that came out last week about in Portland, Oregon, how they closed down a 7-year-old's lemonade stand?
Yes, I did see that report.
Well, listen to the language. This is from the guy who we pay money to, taxpayers, Joe Kawaguchi, environmental health inspector. He said, we have to put the public's health first. And this is the guy they're talking about in Portland, Oregon. A lemonade stand must be licensed under state law, said Eric Pippert. How about Puppet, the Foodborne Illness Prevention Program Manager for the state's Public Health Division? Both county inspectors are, and here he goes. When you go to a public event and set up a shop, you're suddenly engaging in commerce. The fact that you're small scale, I don't think that's relevant. Our role is to protect the public. Hey, how about that millions of pounds of E. coli tainted beef that just went out into the public? Here's the deal, Alex. You crash down on squeezing lemonade kids 7 years old, and you let the big guys take a free ride. The Tysons, the ConAgras, the con games from the too big to fails. So this is what it's all about. This story is a perfect representation of where the country's going. Squeeze the little people.
Well, that's like last year in Sacramento. Twice, armed agents went to a car wash about a 4-cent unpaid federal tax bill, but then for 10-plus years, the insiders told the Securities and Exchange Commission exactly what Bernie Madoff was doing, stealing close to $100 billion. Stay there, Gerald Celente. Let's get into more of your trends on the other side. TrendsResearch.com is his website. Our sites are prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. You know, Gerald, if you just joined us, just brought up the lemonade stand in Portland, Oregon. These little girls, 6 and 7, they wanted $150 from them. It's the mafia. But then I was mentioning the more famous cases out there where the IRS visits with armed agents twice saying, pay your 4-cent bill at a car wash. And it's been admitted, even in the Wall Street Journal, that in the last decade, they've shifted the IRS to focus on blue collar, not even white collar. So you got the crooks in the system trying to protect themselves. And Gerald mentioned how Tyson and others, they can have literally in some cases hundreds of times the violations of even other big companies, but they're allowed to operate. Same thing with BP in Houston and Texas City. And here's the headline: Tyson's profit surges while everybody else's goes down. So it shows how it's a big boys game. It's a monopoly game, Gerald Celente.
It is, and it's becoming more and more like that. I've said this since the beginning, as people have been complaining about Obama and calling him a socialist and a communist. I said it's fascism, the merger of state and corporate powers. You just look at the numbers, they're all there. Pick the sector. The banking sector, as I mentioned, 10 banks control 80% of the action. You look at agriculture. A couple of big firms control most of the business. You look at drugs. You go down the line, retail. Walmart is taking over the country. Every sector, they're squeezing out the little people. And all the regulations are being tilted, as you mentioned, whether it's the IRS or the sales tax people going door to door to pizza places and beauty parlors, shaking them down for every last cent, where they're letting the big criminals run free. And, you mentioned about the Clintons and this guy, this Goldman Sachs guy she married. The Trends Research Institute began in Rhinebeck, where they got married in 1980. And we left Rhinebeck about 3 years ago because the neighborhood started going bad. People like the Clintons started coming up there. It's all of these people that think they're better than everybody else. Because after all, Alex, you see it. Any place they arrive in a foreign country, they're waving from the top of their jumbo jet, and by the time they get to the down the gangplank, they have bowing dignitaries and a red carpet rolled out. I'm not kidding you. We left Rhinebeck because the place got a bit too white for me. And it was all of these arrogant people, the kind, that go to the Hamptons, started finding a different location, that was north in the country. And these are the people, it's on and on again, that they actually believe that they're entitled. And it's just like Michelle Obama going to Spain. How could anybody with any dignity put on such a spectacle like that? If you're going to go on a vacation, do it quietly rather than disrupting everything around you.
And they demanded that entire beaches be shut down so she could frolic around with her girls. This is the new royalty. But the good news is Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama, has the lowest approval rating now of any president in history at this point and they're in free fall, get into your forecast, because you accurately said you'll start seeing entire police forces disband. I see that every day in smaller forces. Larger forces, like out in Oakland, they announced we're going to respond to armed robbery, to car theft, to home invasion. We're hearing they're not going to fix the sidewalks. So they're raising the taxes as all of the basic services are being removed or restricted, and they're slapping toll roads on major roads to give the profits to foreign offshore corporations. And they just think this gravy train's going to go on forever, and now they want to start a new war that'll further bankrupt us, and now they're having to admit we're going into a depression, and you've said you see it really breaking out by the end of this year. How do you see the dominoes falling?
It looks as a currency crisis to us. That's what we're looking at. But again, there are so many wild cards. For example, in September, if the United States and its flunky allies begin to board or attempt to board Iranian ships, that could be the kind of thing that really throws the world economy into a death spiral. Look what's going on right now. Again, these are the things that you can't predict. What's going on in Russia with this horrible heat wave and really the destruction of so much of its wheat crop. And then you look in what's going on in a lot of Asia, particularly Pakistan, with all of these floods. So you have and then of course in the United States with our own disasters man-made by BP, which of course everything's okay now. And by the way, this is important, Alex. You look what's going on in Russia, in Pakistan, what's going on in the U.S. In every instance, you're hearing the people complaining about how unresponsive the governments are. They're going crazy right now in Russia. They're firing people. Same thing in Pakistan. And, of course, we see with the Katrina quality rescue skills in the U.S. Here's what every thinking adult has to grow up to. There's nobody there to lead you or to save you. I don't care what country it is. Governments, by their nature, are run by people that are basically sociopaths that are only interested in their own power and could care less about you, and they're incompetents. They've never worked a day in their life, most of them. They've only learned how to game the system to get a cushy political job. So when we crash before 2010 happens, people better be prepared for it. They better be able to weather this storm, because if there's war with Iran, as you well mentioned, you're going to see oil prices skyrocket, you're going to see gold prices go through the roof, you're going to see hyperinflation, and you're going to see the government crack down on the people like you could never imagine.
And we've seen the buildup for this police state, and they now admit we want to use the Army, we want to use the Marine Corps against you. We're going to federalize your local towns. The establishment, the ruling rats, the ruling class, they've been preparing for this. They knew what happened 10 years ago when they started selling these derivatives. They knew what was going to happen. You could look at it 4 or 5 years ago and forecast the collapse of 2008 and further forecast that we weren't in a recovery. We were just continuing the collapse. So they know what they're doing, but I think they've miscalculated that they're going to get away with it. They thought Obama could be sold as this messianic leader, but Humpty Dumpty has fallen off the wall, and the next Republican savior they give us, unless it's Ron Paul, isn't going to be able to reverse this. So I happen to agree with you, and unfortunately, most of the other analysts are now agreeing with you that it's going to get bad. But you're saying pretty soon, I mean, how bad will this collapse get?
It'll be... We're going to see, look at the unemployment numbers already. What did we just lose? Another 131,000 jobs were lost in July. And what do we have to do? We have to create 1.25 million a year just to stay even. And then the June numbers were revised to 221,000 lost from 125,000. They just keep lying, and they say that the unemployment rate's only 9.5%. Yeah, people drop off the list. They're no longer getting unemployment. They're no longer counted. Who can make this up? We're going to see unemployment worse than the Great Depression. We're going to see people that are incapable, unlike the Great Depression, of taking care of themselves. We're going to see crime going to be able to